Hi everyone, welcome back to English for You. I'm Kat.
And I'm Chickling.
And we are here for day 2 of our article on Kowloon Walled City.
This beautiful place?
No, it's not. Well, it's beautiful now.
Okay.
It's beautiful now because now it's a city park. It used to be kind of the opposite of beautiful, honestly. So it's a place in Hong Kong. Now it's a green place. You can go there and relax. But it used to be extremely densely populated.
And it was only the size of 4 soccer fields with more than 30,000 people.
Yeah, when I think of 26,000 meters, 30,000 people, that's crazy to me. Like, I wonder how high the buildings would have been to give people at least a little bit of space.
And where did they sleep?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you think about Hong Kong apartments today, maybe it's kind of similar. Yeah. But they had hundreds of tiny alleys, water dripping everywhere. They had one mailman, and he wore a hat so that his head wouldn't get dripped on all the time. Yeah, so must have been a crazy place. Yeah. Doesn't exist anymore. And we're going to find out why today. And we're also going to find out a little bit more about what life was actually like there. So let's get into the article and learn a little bit more.
Reading. Welcome to Kowloon Walled City, the world's most densely populated place. Although Kowloon Walled City had things you'd find in any city, it was also a lawless place. Shops were on the first floor, but so were doctors and dentists without permits. Small factories operated above them. These included meat processors that sold dog meat, which was criminal in Hong Kong. Kowloon Walled City was originally a 19th century Chinese military base in British Hong Kong territory. This caused 2 problems. One was that, because of its military status, the Hong Kong government had no power over it. The other was that the Chinese government didn't want to deal with land in another country. Many illegal Chinese immigrants moved to the ungoverned city after World War II. The 2 governments finally agreed to knock down the city in 1987 because of the poor quality of living. This was finished in 1994, and the land became Kowloon Walled City Park. Although Kowloon Walled City no longer exists, it lives on through pop culture. If you want to see some of it for yourself, you can even find it in horror games.
All right, our article starts out today by saying, although Kowloon Walled City had things you'd find in any city, it was also a lawless place. Lawless, that means like no laws.
非常可怕，就跟他们的城市一样。所以九龙寨城呢，就是一个城市嘛。那它有任何你可以找到东西，就像跟一个城市一样。不过也是一个没有法律的地方。Just like how complicated this place is.
Yeah. I mean, you imagine trying to be a policeman in a place with hundreds of alleys. How would you find anything? How would you catch anybody? You probably wouldn't. That's the point. Shops were on the first floor. You know, that's normal. But so were doctors and dentists without permits.
That's scary.
Imagine going to the dentist and you ask, hey, can I see your license? And he's like, oh, I don't have one. Let me pull out your teeth.
so scary.
Yeah, it sounds like something out of a movie. But anyway, yeah, these doctors and dentists didn't have permits. A permit is an official document or piece of paper that shows a person is allowed to do or have something. So you have to have permits for certain things like driving, like you have to have a driver's license, running a business, selling alcohol. That's a big one. You have to have a permit to sell alcohol. If you want to park in the same spot near your house, you have to have a permit to do that. You have to have permits for all sorts of things, especially if you're a doctor, if you're a dentist, if you're, doing something for people that needs a high level of skill, you have to have a permit. So you have to have passed a test or something like that and have to have that piece of paper. So an example sentence, this bar doesn't have a permit to sell alcohol. So the government is shutting it down.
所以我们今天的 Language and Focus 我们要讲的是复合句的用法。那什么是复合句的用法呢？其实它就是表示也或也不的意思。那我们有分肯定跟否定的。那肯定复合句我们有 to too 大家都知道的，这个我们会放在句尾，那我们前面需要加上一个逗号。又或者是 so 呢，来自于复合句的句首，那这个就是它的倒装用法。那么否定复合句呢，其实就是 either 跟 neither。那有些人会说 either， 那这个 either 呢，它其实就是也是放在句尾，可是我们会加一个逗号。那 neither 的部分因为本身就是有否定，我们就不用再加 not。我们来看一下几个例句，我们先看一下肯定复合句。比如说 Connor is intelligent and his sister is too。 你可以看到这边我们的 is 后面是有一个逗号的哦。那如果要倒装的话，就会变成 Connor is intelligent and so is his sister。 那我们再看另外一个否定的复合句。Laurel never drinks juice and her boyfriend doesn't either。 这个就是我们刚刚说的否定复合句的用法。那倒装呢，我们就可以变成 Laurel never drinks juice and neither does her boyfriend。所以我们刚刚那个字呢 permit 就是许可证或证照，所以他们的医生是没有许可证的 very very 可怕。所以呢，所以工作许可证就是 work permit， 或者是像停车 parking permit 这些都可以。那这个字 if you use it as a verb, pay attention to the pronunciation, it's permit， 它就是允许或者是批准什么的。所以比如说 smoking is not permitted anywhere in the theater， 所以你在电影院里面不可以吸烟。所以我们知道呢，在这个九龙寨城呢，商店是在1楼，但是呢还有很多没有许可证的医生跟牙医也都在这里哦。
So yeah, imagine you have to go to the doctor in Kowloon. I think I will be kind of scared because like what else are you going to do? Maybe you can't go outside of Kowloon. Yeah. And there's a reason for that we're going to talk about a little bit later, but first we have to keep describing what you can see in here. Small factories operated above them. Okay, so you have a doctor and a shop and a factory.
Okay.
So things that make things, like not too bad maybe, but factories are often dangerous places. These operated. So operate is one of our words here. Operate means to function as a business, to keep going as a business or a group. So here we're using it without an object, but if you have operate with an object, like to operate something, it means you're running that business or thing. So we usually use that with a person for the subject. So if we say that a shop is operating, that means it's doing business. If you are operating a shop, you are running that business. So an example, this Mexican restaurant has been operating on this street for 20 years. Or the man has been operating this Mexican restaurant for 20 years.
所以 operate 这边是指营运的意思，不过它也有开刀或动手术的意思啦。比如说 is the surgeon going to operate on her？ 就是这个手术的医生真的是要对他动手术吗？这是另外一个意思。所以它的名词就是 operation。那除了当运作，它也是手术的意思。所以比如说一个人刚做完手术，你就可以说 he's in hospital recovering from an operation。那我们再看一下文章的意思，其实就是我们知道有牙医、有商店、有一些医生，那他们楼上其实就是小工厂。
What kind of factories? These included meat processors that sold dog meat. Dog meat, which was criminal in Hong Kong. So they basically took dog meat and they processed it. It means they like cleaned it up and it probably stank horribly. It probably smelled really, really bad. And plus, it's criminal. So for something to be criminal, we're going to find out what that means right now. For something to be criminal as an adjective means involving illegal activity or relating to crime. Basically, okay, doing something outside the law is illegal, like you might park illegally and maybe you'll be asked to pay some money if the police catch you. But if something is criminal, it means you can be punished very harshly for it. If those meat processors get caught by police, they can go to jail, maybe for a long time. So if something is criminal, that means they look at it as a crime. It's not just illegal, it's not just a fine, you won't just get to pay some money and walk home. You have to go to jail if you do something criminal. So this is bad news if you're doing something criminal. Here's an example sentence. The factory owner was doing criminal things to his workers, like not paying them and not letting them see a doctor.
processor 在这边指的就是呢，那种加工厂的意思，或者加工公司。那你知道这些狗肉啊的加工公司，啪啪，然后那个 criminal 就是犯罪的啦，或者是违法的、犯法的。
That's right.
所以犯罪活动就是 criminal activity， 这边是当形容词。But 你把它当名词也是可以，它就是罪犯。所以比如说 the criminal confessed to the priest， 代表呢这个罪犯呢他就向这一个神父就是承认他的错误。所以其中呢在这个包括你知道说这些工厂包括就是出售狗肉的加工厂，那时候在香港其实是犯法的。
So this was highly illegal. Not just illegal, it was criminal. But the thing was, Kowloon was so lawless, they probably didn't even have police. So the article says, well, we need to learn how it got this bad. Kowloon Walled City was originally a 19th century Chinese military base in British Hong Kong territory. Right, so if you know your history of Hong Kong, you know that for a while Hong Kong was owned by the British. But the Chinese had a military base in Hong Kong, which was Kowloon. So it was originally totally a different place, and basically it was owned by China. So originally, this is one of our vocab words. Originally is an adverb, as you can tell by that ly, that means in the first place, or at first, or before it was like this. So before Kowloon was a concrete jungle, originally it was a military base. Now you can take off that ly and just get original, which is an adjective that means like something that is the first of its kind. It's not a copy. Or you could say the original means the first place. So, an example sentence for this. Originally, I wanted to become a doctor, but I discovered my love for music and became a singer instead.
所以 originally 指的就是起初，这边就是副词或原来。那老师刚刚有提到嘛，它的形容词我们把 ly 拿掉就会变形容词，那意思很多，它可以指起初的啦、原先的，或甚至是原作的。那当名词的时候也有原稿跟原作的意思。比如说 Are these songs originals? They are so catchy.
All right, so original, we have originally, and then we learned it was Chinese territory. Let's find out what territory means. Territory as a noun is an area of land, and it's not just an area of land. Specifically, it's land that belongs to or is controlled by a government. So, for a good example, you can think of Taiwan. Taiwan was once Japanese territory. It's not anymore, but when the Japanese came to take over the island, for a while the Japanese ruled it, and it was Japanese territory. A lot of African countries became British territory after the UK took them over. And now they are independent countries. So if a territory is, owned by a government or controlled by a government, that means it's not in the original country, but it's linked to that government. So you could also talk about territory as individuals. So one person or animal's territory is the place that person or animal controls. You think of like a dog, maybe its bed is the dog's territory. So on a big country scale, here's an example sentence. Japan thinks this island is Japanese territory, but South Koreans say the island is part of their country.
Territory 就是领土啦，或者是领地，所以其实如果是敌方的领土，你加个 enemy 就好了。Enemy territory 就是敌方的领土。所以我们来看一下另外一个句子。A dog uses urine to mark its territory.
That's right.
对，它就是尿尿，然后这是我的地盘，不可以来哦。
This is my tree.
对，这是我的。My corgi does that.
Oh my god,
so cute. 所以九龙寨城呢，它原来是19世纪中国在英属香港领土上的一个军事基地。So what happened after that?
So, okay, you have a Chinese military base in British territory, which is in Hong Kong, and it's kind of hard to get to. So this caused two problems.
Okay.
One was that because of its military status, the Hong Kong government had no power over it.
Oh.
Of course, because the Hong Kong government is under British control at the time. Later it was its own government, but it still didn't have control. So status, we're talking about military status. Now status is the official position of a person or thing according to the law. So basically, the law says this is military land. And it belongs to China. So Hong Kong cannot do anything to it.
OK， 好奇怪哦。所以这个 status 的就是地位，所以我们就知道说，那这样子导致两个问题。那第一个问题就是因为当时候九龙寨城它就是军事地位，而且香港政府它根本就没有权利去管这个地方。
The other, the second problem, was that the Chinese government didn't want to deal with land in another country. Well, why did they make a military base there then? I don't know. Well, they didn't want to deal with it. They didn't want to deal with land in another country. Many illegal Chinese immigrants moved to the ungoverned city after World War II. Okay, so you had this old military base. It became a place to live after World War II ended and probably the military left. Now, we're talking here about illegal immigrants. Illegal means not allowed by the law. It's kind of like criminal, but it's not involving a crime. So it's not legal. And an immigrant is a person who comes to a country or a place to live there. So an illegal immigrant is a foreign person who's living in a country and they don't actually have permission to live there. So like the people who moved to Kowloon from China, they weren't supposed to be there, but they lived there and they kept living there.
所以这边的 immigrant 指的就是移民，那我们是指外国移入的这样子。
So what happened there? What happened?
Yeah, 所以我们刚刚不是说有两个问题嘛 they had two problems. 那第一个我们刚刚有讲，就是香港它没有权利去管。那另一个就是中国政府呢，它不想要跟另外一个国家的土地打交道。所以呢，二战之后呢，就有很多非法的中国移民啊，到了这一个都没有人管理的城市。哇
Yeah, so they had two problems, like Hong Kong can't do anything, China doesn't want to do anything. Therefore, there's no government controlling the city, making sure that people follow the laws, making sure that everything's okay there. It's just kind of people living there and trying to take care of themselves and becoming more and more crowded, more and more run down. But of course, it's different now, and Kowloon Walled City is not a city anymore. The article says the two governments finally agreed to knock down the city in 1987 because of the poor quality of living. This was finished in 1994, and the land became Kowloon Walled City Park. So to knock something down, or we could use the verb to demolish, that's what happened with the city. Basically, they took explosives, they took a wrecking ball and a bunch of construction equipment, they knocked the buildings down. They removed them and made them fall to the ground. Yeah. And so they weren't there anymore. No more hundreds of alleyways, no more wet pipes, no more single mailman with a hat.
Yeah. Poor man. Okay. 所以呢，他真的好可怜哦。那个 knock something down 就是把东西拆毁、拆除。所以因为生活质量真的太差，品质差，所以两国政府呢就最终同意在1987年的时候拆除掉这座城市。然后1994年已经完成拆除，所以这个土地呢现在就变成了九龙寨城公园了。It's a green park now.
That's right. So it's now a city park. Although Kowloon Walled City no longer exists, it lives on through pop culture. So live on means to continue to exist, which is kind of weird because we said it doesn't exist anymore.
No.
But basically to live on means exist in people's minds. Like people still remember it, even if it's not there anymore.
It's always used as a theme in a game, like.
Yeah, to live on. So like, you know, people might remember somebody who's dead, but their memory lives on through their songs, through their acting, through maybe what people remember about them as a person. That's what it means to live on.
就是有继续存在啦 live on 继续存在或流传下去，那不其实有一种依靠什么生活的感觉，像是 his job provides him enough to live on， 这个 live on 也是可以，这他们两个的意思不同。所以呢，虽然九龙寨城呢已经不复存在，不过它还是继续的流传下去。我们大家是记得有曾经这个地方存在的。
So as you were saying, you know, you can still find Kowloon in some places. If you want to see some of it for yourself, you can even find it in horror games. Ooh.
可怕
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to see something for yourself, if somebody says, see for yourself, it means look at something by yourself without someone showing it to you, without us explaining it to you like we are right now. So right now, you can't see Kowloon because we're just talking about it. But if you want to see it for yourself, you can go look in these games and find it there. And what they are is horror games. Given that Kowloon's, you know, really dark, really wet, kind of yucky, kind of, yeah, really gross, it's kind of a great place to have a horror game. So horror is a very strong feeling of fear and dread, like something's going to happen to you, and shock. And horror is used as an adjective to describe things that make you feel that feeling. So things like movies that are scary. You could also call these scary games, but horror is stronger than scary. Like scary might be like, ah! Makes you jump, but horror is like, I don't like this, I don't like this, I feel bad, I want to run, I don't like this. Yeah, so I actually looked up a couple of horror games with Kowloon in them. Ooh. The two that I found were Phantasmal and Paranormal HK. So Paranormal Hong Kong. Yeah. And they're only about, maybe the last one came out in 2017. They're only a few years old. You can probably find them on Steam if you play PC games. Yeah. So, an example sentence for horror. Denise loves to watch horror movies, but the rest of her family finds them too frightening. Yeah.
所以 see for oneself 就是你自己亲自去看，所以如果你想要亲自就是体验一下九龙寨城是什么感觉，你可以去找一些恐怖的游戏，像我们刚刚有提到，那 horror 这个字就是有恐怖或恐惧，所以其实恐怖电影英文就是 horror movies. Are you a big fan of horror movies?
I am, although actually most horror movies I don't think they're that scary.
Really?
maybe I'm too desensitized. Like I have to get into something like really psychologically deep. Like Rosemary's Baby is one that actually scares me. Yeah.
OK, 好，所以这个恐怖电影呢，就是 horror movies 很好记。比如说 he doesn't watch horror movies because they give him bad dreams. 不看恐怖电影，因为他会做噩梦。好，所以如果想去看看的话呢，可以到恐怖游戏找到这个很奇妙的地方。
All right, so Kowloon, we've learned about it. It has come and gone, and yeah, you can find it in games if you still want to find it. It sounds like a really interesting place. Like we said in day one, it's surreal.
Yeah,
I think, yeah, that's why we would write an article about it, because it's such a weird kind of place to think about. Some place that basically grew up on its own around all these people and just became literally a concrete jungle. It's crazy. So, with that said, that's the end of our article, and it's time to go to our For You chat.
For You chat.
So our For You chat question for today is, do you think it was right for the government to remove people from their homes in Kowloon walled city? Explain your answer.
That's a very complicated question, and I don't think there's one right answer.
Me either.
No, because like you could say, yeah, it's wrong for people to be removed from their homes. However, Kowloon clearly needed to be knocked down because it was not healthy. It did not have any laws. Like it had bad things happening there.
Look at those processors. I just can't imagine.
Like that's just the surface, you know. Imagine how much worse stuff there was happening there, how dangerous it could be. Yeah, I mean, probably in the long run it was better for people, but also, if you lived in Kowloon your whole life and then you had to leave, I guess it would be really upsetting.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's a complicated question.
So you guys can think about it.
Yeah, maybe we can find some interviews with somebody who lived in Kowloon. I'm sure there are some people who still remember it. So that's all we've got for today. You guys can find out more about this mysterious walled city if you go online and do some research. If you like to play games, it's in games. So that's what we've got. For English For You, I'm Kat.
I'm Trikling.
And we'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Vocabulary Review.
Permit. You can't open a restaurant unless you have a permit to sell food here. Operate. Lots of small shops that sell many kinds of things operate on this street. Criminal. Arthur was sent to prison after he got caught doing criminal activities. Originally. Isaac's apartment building was originally a factory before it was turned into apartments. Territory. In the past, Britain claimed the U.S. as a part of its territory. Horror. Jill went to see a horror movie, but it scared her, and she left the movie theater early.
智慧小补帖。
Status. Immigrant.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net